I'll get right to it. All Unitarian Universalists oppose bigotry and oppression in every form, even if they sometimes do so imperfectly. We reject any and all hierarchies of human beings based on physical characteristics. We reject any and all moral hierarchies based on sexual identity or preference, national origin, language, or religious affiliation. We reject the notion that the needs of the human species justify degradation of the national environment at the expense of other species or the non-organic structures of that environment. We revere beauty as something far deeper than physical appearance, and we celebrate freedom. We make all of this plain not through negative statements, not through crushing anyone, not by taking a hostile stance, but by a covenant to affirm and promote 7 clear positive principles: the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Look at the beautiful flow here, beginning with a bow to every human being, moving to a bow to the living web of existence, then ending in a moment of silence to consider the momentousness of what was just said and done. These principles serve as 7 guiding stars, but stars are more than points of distant light. They have heat and mass and gravity. They pull us toward themselves while they also radiate power towards us, through us, and beyond us. Their pull and their penetration are one, indivisible, irresistible. And why would a religious movement settle for anything less? Each of these 7 clearly meets the definition of a principle. Here's a dictionary: a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior or for a chain of reasoning. Principles should be as close to forever and always in their scope and intent as we limited human beings can manage to put into words. They should be easy to understand, even for those who may not agree with them completely or at all. Our move in a beautiful arc from the individual to society to the cosmos and back again. An open, expanding circle that includes everyone and everything. They end at the right moment, leaving us in reverent silence within the, quote, interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. But here's the language of what's being proposed as an 8th UU principle. We will journey together towards spiritual wholeness by building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, that's capitalized, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This is clearly not a principle. Longer than the first 3 principles combined, it's a policy or mission statement that calls for active participation in an ongoing conflict between, among, and even within persons. All of our current 7 principles deny any real or lasting basis for such a conflict, saying in effect that we are all one, our differences matter less than what connects us, we shall overcome those differences. The language of the proposed 8th principle commits Unitarian Universalists to an endless war on a racism that's conceived as both an enemy without and an enemy within. And of course, soldiers in a war need discipline. The command to accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions suggests the possibility of disciplinary measures to be enacted against those who do not or will not participate. We see this happening now in the recent silencing and punishment of ministers who conscientiously object to this militarizing spirit. The idea of being accountable for the sincerity or effectiveness of our actions, thoughts, or feelings as ordered participants in an ongoing conflict is unprecedented in Unitarian Universalism. To whom must we make such an accounting? Under threat of what sanctions, punishment, or other discipline? Who makes the determination about what is racism, or in what, where, or whom we find it? Each individual UU? Or will there be a panel or local panel of judges? Ibram X. Kendi proposes that we establish in the nation and permanently fund a Department of this is Kendi now, Department of Anti-Racism, DOA, comprised of formally trained experts on racism and no political appointees. The DOA would be responsible for pre-clearing all local, state, and federal public policies to ensure they won't yield racial inequity, monitor those policies, investigate private racist policies where racial inequity surfaces, and monitor public officials for expressions of racist ideas. The DOA would be empowered with disciplinary tools to wield over and against policymakers and public officials who do not voluntarily change their racist policies and ideas. Please read this statement carefully sometime and give it some thought. Is the UUA proposing some version of Kendi's DOA? Would most of our members be comfortable with such a permanent department at the UUA or such a committee in their local congregations? Or perhaps it would be some sort of unelected, unimpeachable, traveling racism assessor appointed by the UUA to check on our ideas and use, quote, disciplinary tools to wield over and against us when we fall short in or disagree with their assessment of our thoughts, words, and actions. Are we happy with this authoritarian vision of the faith of the free? It's easy to imagine accountable dismantling, taking even more troubling turns. If we are measuring and keeping accounts now as part of our UU experience, those who dismantle more racism might seem to count more or hold more in their accounts than others among us. The more racism I dismantle, the higher I will stand, the more I will count. As an active dismantler UU, I will count more than a non-dismantler UU. Will our prowess at dismantling now be assessed and measured as a regular part of our UU experience? Should we all expect to receive grades at the end of each church year, or titles, dismantler level 1, dismantler level 2, gold star dismantler? Is that what we really want? What's next? What could come next? This is also easy to imagine, especially after the many real-world examples we've seen in recent years. The most numerically accountable way to dismantle institutional oppressions would be to reduce the number of oppressor organizations and or the number of their members. Such notions of accountable dismantling under a religious mantle have become very familiar to us since 9/11/2001. Should we be completely surprised if some feel they must now take dismantling to this next level in acts of explosive witness? And of course, I know those wouldn't represent the UUism anyone wants any more than those 9/11 attackers represented Islam. But if this seems exaggerated, please consider recent actions by the new discipline and punish incarnation of the UU Ministers Association, as it has worked to destroy the careers and reputations of minister after minister in recent years. UUMA victims have also suffered extreme health effects, which seriously impact their families. Look at the banning of dissenting ministers from formerly welcoming pulpits. Look at the attempts to physically destroy their books and to encourage social media pile-ons in which hundreds of so-called ministers condemn a colleague's words before even reading them. And we received a letter from one colleague saying, don't read them. Don't read the book, just condemn it. Look at some of the comments posted on militant UU websites. Do we really want to see more passionate UUs? Should we be guided by the actions that we've seen by other passionate believers and the extremes to which they are willing to go? Won't passionate believers on the other side be encouraged to respond by doing more of the same? We can see in the eighth principle a vision of the children of light locked in eternal struggle with the children of darkness, one of the worst ideas that religion has to offer, if not the very worst. I think that we can do better. Our 7 existing principles show us how. They respond to all forms of bigotry and oppression by reaching beyond them, not by locking horns in battle. The proposed 8th principle is a house of cards that stands only if we agree that there is substantial racism already or permanently present in ourselves and our UU institutions. But this is not an assertion to which all UUs agree, nor have we been honestly asked to share our thoughts about it in a truly open debate or by means of a universal, confidential ballot or survey. This is not sufficient grounds for changing the spirit of our carefully crafted core document from one of peace to one of conflict. But make no mistake, and I want to be very clear about this, the 8th principle has been promoted by deeply caring people who are concerned, who are genuinely concerned about pervasive injustices. Speaking and sharing the words that they have composed is very important to them, and they should not be scorned because their cherished words do not express what can properly be called a principle. An alternative sits right in front of us. The UU purposes statement, which I'll wager some of us have not even read, is essentially our mission statement. And such statements, mission statements, are not forever and always, but they're reviewed on a more regular basis than core principles are. Usually every 5 years or so, they say, for a good mission statement. We could suggest that since it seems so important to a large number of us to repeat these words liturgically, to incant them, and to see them in print on documents, they might have a temporary home in the UU purposes statement. The logical place is just before the closing paragraph that disavows and prohibits any creedal test for UUs. Alan, can we show that slide? Yeah, let's see, I need to get out so I can continue with my own manuscript. There we go. Thank you, Alan. This shows an alternative placement. You can see what I've done here is put the 8th principle in as a principle, and I've put the 8th principle in as part of the purposes statement. I'll run through it. The purposes of the UUA. Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources and exercise its corporate powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. The primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregations, organize new congregations, extend and strengthen Unitarian Universalist institutions, and implement its principles. The association, I've underlined this statement, the association, this is our existing statement, declares and affirms its special responsibility and that of its member societies and organizations to promote the full participation of persons in all of its and their activities and in the full range of human endeavor without regard to race, color, sex, disability, affectional or sexual orientation, age, or national origin, and without requiring adherence to any particular interpretation of religion or to any particular religious belief or creed. And now here's where I would propose we might place the 8th principle language. We will journey together towards spiritual wholeness by building a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. And now we come to the existing last paragraph. Nothing herein shall be deemed to infringe upon the individual freedom of belief, which is inherent in the Universalist and Unitarian heritages, or to conflict with any statement of purpose, covenant, or bond of union used by any society unless such is used as a creedal test. And we can take that off the screen now. Thanks so much, Alan. And I could send that to anybody who wants it, the comparative document.
Okay, you got about 1 minute,
have a look at,
Greg.
what's that?
1 minute, last minute.
1 minute, okay. Well, So we can still think of this, we can think of this last statement in those purposes as our freedom clause. We also might ask if the underlined statement above it already does the work of the statement of the proposed eighth principle. We must interrogate the notion that we are personally or institutionally racist in spite of our own self-understanding, as corporate trainer Robin DiAngelo might assert, by asking if this does not, in effect, require of us, quote, adherence to a particular interpretation of religion or to a particular religious belief or creed. You might not see it or feel it, but when you look at yourself or your church, but you must believe that it's really there because I say so and I speak on behalf of who? God? Beloved community? Who do you think you are? Many will still object to the conflict-centered nature of the language of the eighth principle, but the freedom clause should help make it clear that no one can be drafted to participate in any accountable dismantling of racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions that others have defined for them over and against their own conscience and understanding of themselves and their institutions. Our principles are a vital part of what makes us who we are, and they must only be changed after the deepest and fullest debate and discussion that we can manage. We haven't had that yet, but we must. We must.